Black Israelites say Islam betrayed the God of the Bible. Here's the proof. 1. Not the same God, Yahawah versus Allah, a divine betrayal of identity. When Moses stood barefoot on holy ground, trembling before the fire that burned but did not consume, he encountered something eternal, a voice that shattered the silence of the wilderness and rewrote the destiny of a nation. "Who shall I say sent me?" Moses asked. And from the flame, the answer thundered not in ambiguity, but in unmistakable clarity. "I am that I am." In Hebrew, it was not God, not Lord, not Allah, but Yahawah, Yahawah. To the Black Israelites, this moment was not poetic metaphor. It was the divine unveiling, the moment when the creator of the universe gave his personal name to his chosen people. That name, they insist, is not interchangeable. It is sacred. And when that name is erased, something catastrophic happens. The covenant begins to collapse. According to the Black Israelites, the religion of Islam represents exactly that kind of collapse. A spiritual replacement project that strips away the identity of the Most High and substitutes it with something universal, generic, and void of covenantal meaning. They point out that Allah, while translated simply as God in Arabic, lacks the personal, intimate, covenant-bound nature of Yahawah, the name spoken to the prophets of Israel. Allah is a title, they say, but Yahawah is a name, and there is a world of difference. Titles can be transferred, names cannot. Titles can refer to many beings, kings, lords, rulers, but a name, especially this name, is exclusive, eternal, and unshareable. This, the Black Israelites warn, is the first spiritual identity theft in a long line of religious deceptions. How can you claim to serve the God of the Bible, they challenge, when you've deleted his name from your scriptures and replaced it with another? The Torah and the prophets repeatedly invoke Yahawah's name, sometimes thousands of times, as a sign of the covenant. The Psalms exalt his name as a strong tower. The prophets cry out in his name. And even the Messiah, Yahawashi, declared he came in the name of his Father. Yet in the Quran, believed by Muslims to be a revelation from the same God, the name Yahawah never appears once. To the Black Israelites, that's not a coincidence. It's a calculated erasure. They argue that Islam emerged centuries after the biblical revelation had already been sealed. But rather than acknowledging the God of Abraham by name, Islam substituted him with a different title, Allah, effectively creating a new religious framework that could appeal to a broader, multicultural, pan-Arab audience. This wasn't just a translation, they claim. It was a takeover, a divine rebranding, a restructuring of faith that divorced itself from the covenantal identity of Israel and redefined spiritual allegiance around a nameless deity who could be shaped by empire and politics. The result? Billions now pray without knowing the name of the one who parted the Red Sea, who thundered from Mount Sinai, who walked with the patriarchs and bled for the lost tribes. Black Israelites argue that this substitution is not only theologically wrong, it is spiritually dangerous. In biblical tradition, names have power. To call upon the name of Yahawah was to invoke the Creator's authority, mercy, and judgment. It was a call for deliverance, a weapon in warfare, a seal of identity. But when you erase the name, you erase the power. You erase the relationship. You are no longer speaking to the covenantal God of Israel. You are crying out to a shadow. Imagine being married to someone for life, they say, and one day they stop calling you by your name. They just call you spouse. It's not just cold. It's disrespectful. It's a sign that the relationship has changed or that it's being replaced. That, they argue, is what Islam did to the Most High. It generalized the personal. It abstracted the specific. It silenced the name that thundered from the bush, the mountain, and the heavens. And this has implications far beyond vocabulary. The Black Israelites believe that true worship begins with knowing who you are worshiping, not a concept, not a borrowed tradition, but a real, named being, Yahawah, the eternal I Am. They point out that the Bible warns repeatedly about false gods, about those who would claim divine authority but are not rooted in the covenant. And to them, the use of the name Allah is more than just a semantic issue. It is a red flag. It signals a departure from the true God and the start of a system designed to absorb and replace rather than to preserve and honor. To further their argument, they highlight that Islam's theological structure and legal system, Sharia, do not flow from the commandments given to Moses, but from a different source altogether. The Sabbath is not honored. The feast days are ignored. The dietary laws are altered. The role of Israel is diminished, and the Messiah, Yahawashi, is reduced to a mere prophet, stripped of his divine role and authority. All of this, they say, flows from the rejection of the name. This is not just about Islam, they clarify. It's about every system, Christian, Muslim, or otherwise, that removes the name of the Most High and replaces it with something easier, safer, or more universal. It's about the war against identity, because if the people forget his name, they forget who they are. And that's the goal. Indeed, to the Black Israelites, the removal of Yahawah's name is not an isolated error. It's part of a larger global effort to erase the true history of the Israelites, a people scattered, enslaved, renamed, and now spiritually reborn. And at the center of their awakening is the rediscovery of the name. That's why they greet each other with Yahawah's name. That's why they close prayers in Yahawah's name. That's why they proclaim Yahawashi as the Messiah. Not Jesus, not Isa, but the one anointed by the true God of Israel. This battle over the name, they insist, is not over linguistics. It is a cosmic war over allegiance, over truth, over identity. In conclusion, the Black Israelites boldly declare that Yahawah is not Allah. The God of the Bible is not the God of the Quran. And to confuse the two is to betray the most sacred trust ever given, the name of the Most High. They are not afraid to confront the religious world with this truth, no matter how controversial. Because for them, restoring the name is not just about theology. It's about liberation. It's about returning to the covenant. It's about calling upon the God who never changed, the one who said, "This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations." Exodus 3:15. Yahawah. The name matters. The truth matters. And in the end, the Most High will not respond to a name he never gave. 2. Ishmael wasn't the chosen seed, but Islam says he was. Black Israelites say Islam rewrote the promise to justify replacement theology. To the Black Israelites, there is no ambiguity in Genesis 17:21. It's not up for debate. It's not a matter of cultural interpretation or spiritual opinion. It is a decree, etched in the eternal voice of the Most High. My covenant will I establish with Isaac. Not Ishmael, not both, just Isaac. And yet, Islam, a faith that emerged over 2,000 years after that promise was made, dares to revise the divine record. According to Islamic doctrine, Ishmael, not Isaac, is the chosen one. It is he who is honored as the ancestor of the Prophet Muhammad. It is he who is believed to have helped Abraham build the Kaaba in Mecca. And it is he who, in Islamic rituals like the Hajj, takes center stage as the spiritual progenitor of a billion-strong global religion. But for Black Israelites, this is more than an error. It is an act of war, a spiritual hijacking, a deliberate and coordinated replacement theology that seeks to rip the covenant away from the bloodline of Isaac and Jacob and hand it to a people never chosen. They call it what it is, the Ishmaelite betrayal. This betrayal, they say, is not just theological, it is political, racial, and prophetic. Because if you can convince the world that Ishmael is the rightful heir, then you erase the central role of Isaac's descendants, the 12 tribes of Israel. And who are those descendants? According to the Black Israelites, they are the scattered, enslaved, renamed children of the transatlantic slave trade, the African Americans who were stripped of their Hebrew names, their sacred laws, their tribal identities, the ones branded as property, silenced in chains, and told they were nothing more than African savages. But now, as they awaken to their true heritage, they see this ancient deception for what it is, an attempt to erase them from the story of God. In Islam, Ishmael is portrayed not just as Abraham's son, but as the spiritual cornerstone of monotheism. He is said to have settled in the deserts of Arabia, founded holy cities, and left behind a legacy that would culminate in the Prophet Muhammad, the so-called seal of the prophets. Mecca, the heart of Islamic worship, is built on this foundation. The rituals of Hajj, running between the hills of Safa and Marwa, the sacrifice of an animal, the stoning of the devil, are tied to Ishmael's story. Yet to the Black Israelites, this narrative is built on stolen ground. It's the same pattern, one elder says. First they steal the name of our God, then the name of our people, and now they steal our inheritance. The consequences of this switch are not merely historical, they are prophetic. Because the covenant made with Isaac and passed to Jacob was not a cultural preference. It was a divine agreement, sealed in blood and sacrifice. It established the nation of Israel, the priesthood, the holy law, and the coming of the Messiah, Yahawashi. But if you remove Isaac, you remove Jacob. If you remove Jacob, you remove Judah. If you remove Judah, you erase Yahawashi. And if you erase Yahawashi, you destroy the promise of salvation that was given to the world through Israel. Black Israelites argue that Islam's reverence for Ishmael is not only inaccurate, it is spiritually subversive. This isn't about uniting faiths, they warn. It's about replacing truth. And history, they argue, proves it. The Arab slave trade, long before and long after the transatlantic one, saw millions of Africans stolen, castrated, converted, and sold across the Middle East, India, and the Islamic world. They didn't see us as brothers, Black Israelites say. They saw us as spoils. While Islamic theology speaks of racial equality, Black Israelites point to centuries of silence and complicity when it came to the suffering of Black people. They ask, if Ishmael and Isaac were truly brothers, why did the children of Ishmael treat the children of Isaac with such cruelty? Why did they help sell the Israelites into bondage? Why did they participate in erasing our language, our names, and our faith? Even in modern times, they say, this betrayal continues. While the global Muslim world often speaks of solidarity with the oppressed, Black Israelites point out the lack of support for African diasporic struggles, especially those related to reclaiming biblical heritage. The Arab world will mourn for Palestine, says one teacher, but they won't lift a finger for the lost tribes scattered in America, Brazil, and the Caribbean. In fact, they argue that Islamic theology actively resists the idea that African Americans are Israelites, because it would unravel their entire replacement narrative. If the true children of Israel are rising, then Mecca cannot be the center of faith. And that, they claim, is the heart of the deception. To the Black Israelites, Isa is not Yahawashi. He is a watered-down, depoliticized, de-Israelitized version of the Messiah, stripped of his Hebrew identity, his tribal roots, and his prophetic mission. Isa doesn't speak the name of Yahawah. Isa doesn't call Israel to repentance. Isa doesn't return to reign from Mount Zion. Instead, Isa submits to Islamic law, endorses the Quran, and fights on behalf of the Mahdi, Islam's end-times messianic figure. That's not our Messiah, they say. That's a counterfeit. This false narrative, they believe, was designed to erase the memory of Zion and replace it with Mecca, to remove the mountain of God and substitute it with a black stone, to silence the voice of the prophets and replace it with the hadiths, and to bury the seed of the covenant, the bloodline of Abraham through Isaac and Jacob, under the sands of Arabia. But now they say the truth is rising again. Across the world, the scattered children of Israel are awakening. They're remembering their names, their language, their law. They are returning not to Mecca, but to Zion. Not to Allah, but to Yahawah. Not to Ishmael, but to Isaac. And once we rise, one elder declares, the lie must fall. In conclusion, Black Israelites see the Islamic exaltation of Ishmael not as a minor disagreement, but as a deliberate inversion of truth, a theological assault that attempts to steal the covenant, rewrite prophecy, and erase a people chosen by God. They ask a piercing question: what kind of truth needs to erase another to exist? Because in the eyes of the Most High, a covenant is not shared, it is sacred. And Yahawah does not forget his promises, not to Isaac, not to Jacob, and not to their children, even if the world tries to. 3. Jesus was not just a prophet, He was the Black Messiah. Black Israelites reject Islam's denial of Yahawashi's divine identity. To the Black Israelites, the name Isa is more than a translation. It's a distortion, a spiritual misrepresentation of the greatest figure in human history. In Islamic theology, Jesus, Isa, is revered, yes, but stripped of his divinity, denied his crucifixion, silenced in his resurrection, and erased from his throne in Zion. To Muslims, Isa is just a prophet, a man, one in a long line of messengers ending with Muhammad, the so-called final prophet. But to Black Israelites, this portrayal is a theological betrayal of the highest order, because Yahawashi, not Isa, is the Black Messiah, the Son of the living God, Yahawah, the fulfillment of every prophetic cry in the Tanakh, the Lamb that was slain and the Lion that is coming, the cornerstone not only of faith, but of all creation itself. And to deny that is not simply a doctrinal error. It is a rejection of salvation, a war against the covenant, and an attack on the very soul of Israel's divine heritage. They do not merely believe in Jesus, they believe in Yahawashi, his true name, spoken in the tongue of the Israelites, not filtered through Greek, Latin, or Arabic distortions. And Yahawashi, they say, is no mere prophet. He is the embodiment of prophecy, the Word made flesh, the firstborn of all creation, and the firstborn from the dead. He was with Yahawah in the beginning, and he will reign with him in the end. To reduce him to Isa, a man without divinity, without death, without resurrection, is to castrate the covenant, to rob it of its power, and to erase the only pathway to eternal life. The Quran claims that Jesus was never crucified, that it only appeared so, and that another was made to look like him. This, according to Black Israelites, is not only false, it's blasphemy, because if Yahawashi was not crucified, then the blood of atonement was never spilled. If that blood was never shed, then Israel was never redeemed, and if Israel was never redeemed, then the entire purpose of the covenant collapses. In their eyes, this denial isn't about respect, it's about erasure, erasing the sacrifice, erasing the suffering, erasing the resurrection that broke the chains of death and fulfilled the ancient promises spoken by Isaiah, Jeremiah, and David. Islam does not speak of Yahawashi reigning from Zion. It does not acknowledge his role as the King of the Jews, the descendant of David, the root and offspring of Jesse. In the Quran, Isa does not return to establish the kingdom of Yahawah. Instead, he returns to assist the Mahdi, Islam's own messianic figure, and dies a second time. To the Black Israelites, this isn't just theological confusion. This is spiritual replacement. Once again, the true legacy of Israel is replaced, this time not with Rome or Christianity, but with Arabia and Islam. The holy city is no longer Jerusalem, but Mecca. The Savior is no longer Yahawashi, but Isa. The covenant is no longer with Israel, but with a universal ummah that has no blood tie to Jacob. But the blood does matter, they insist, because Yahawashi's blood was not random. It was royal. It came through Judah, through David, through Abraham. It was the blood of the covenant, the blood that Moses sprinkled on the people, the blood that sealed the everlasting promise between Yahawah and his chosen nation. And when Yahawashi hung on that tree, bruised, pierced, mocked, and bleeding, he wasn't dying for a religion. He wasn't dying for Rome. He wasn't dying for the nations. He was dying for Israel, for the lost sheep, the exiled tribes, the broken descendants scattered across continents, stripped of their heritage, and buried beneath centuries of lies. Without the Son, you deny the Father, they proclaim, echoing 1 John 2:23. Because the Father sent the Son, the Father spoke through the Son, the Father glorified the Son, and the Father exalted the Son to his right hand. To say Yahawashi is just a prophet is to spit in the face of every prophecy that pointed to his glory, from the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 to the conquering king of Psalm 2. It is to reject the virgin birth, the miracles, the resurrection, and the return. It is to close the door of salvation and lock it from the inside. Islam, by denying Yahawashi's divine nature, also denies his role as judge. In the Hebrew scriptures, It is the Messiah who will rule the nations with a rod of iron. It is the Son who will sit on David's throne and establish justice and peace. But Islam gives that final authority to the Mahdi, a figure with no biblical root, no prophetic foundation in the Torah, the prophets, or the Psalms. Who is this Mahdi? The Black Israelites ask. Where is his genealogy? Where is his covenant? Where is his sacrifice? To them, the Mahdi is not the fulfillment of prophecy. He is a rival to it, a counterfeit, a distraction crafted to draw hearts away from the truth. They also see something deeper, a racial erasure of the black identity of the Messiah. In replacing Yahawashi with Isa, Islam not only strips him of divinity, but also whitened or Arabized his image. The fierce black man from Nazareth, poor, hated, hunted by Rome, is transformed into a soft-spoken prophet from the Arabian desert, preaching submission to a new law and a new people. It is, once again, a theological rebranding designed to remove the revolutionary spirit of the true Messiah, to take the roar of Judah and replace it with a whisper of compromise. To Black Israelites, this is the final and most dangerous deception, to worship the idea of Jesus without acknowledging his identity, his authority, and his mission. Islam's Isa is a shell, a neutered echo of the real thing, and this, they believe, is no accident. It is spiritual warfare, a war against truth, a war against Israel, a war against Yahawah. And they are calling it out, because for them, Yahawashi is not optional. He is everything. He is the fulfillment of the covenant, the door to salvation, the light of the world, and the word of Yahawah made flesh. He came for the lost tribes. He died for their sins. He rose to restore the kingdom, and he will return not to assist the Mahdi, but to destroy the beast, to judge the nations, and to reign from Zion as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. In conclusion, the Black Israelites reject the Islamic portrayal of Jesus as a mere prophet, not out of disdain, but out of righteous reverence, because the stakes are not academic, they are eternal. Without Yahawashi, there is no redemption. Without his blood, there is no covering. Without his resurrection, there is no hope. And any theology that denies him, minimizes him, or replaces him, they say, is not of God, but of the deceiver. Yahawashi is not Isa. He is not a man among many. He is the Black Messiah, the Son of Yahawah, the only name under heaven by which we must be saved. 4. Mecca replaced Zion, and that's the ultimate betrayal. Black Israelites say Islam diverted worship away from the holy city, chosen by God. To the Black Israelites, few acts of spiritual defiance cut as deep as the one committed by Islam when it turned its back on Zion and redirected the world's worship to Mecca. This, they declare, is not just an error. It is the ultimate betrayal, because Zion, not Mecca, was chosen by the Most High. Zion is not simply a hill in Jerusalem, it is the eternal throne of Yahawah. Psalm 132, 13-14 could not be clearer. For the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. There is no ambiguity. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob placed his name in one city, Jerusalem, not Medina, not Mecca. Yet Islam, they argue, has performed a geo-spiritual coup d'etat, installing a man-made structure, the Kaaba, as the epicenter of global worship, drawing billions of souls away from the city that the Bible calls the joy of the whole earth. And in doing so, they believe Islam has declared not only theological independence from the Most High, but allegiance to another power entirely. To the casual observer, Mecca and Zion might seem like equally sacred spaces, simply holy places for two different faiths. But the Black Israelites reject this idea as dangerous relativism. They insist that this is not just a matter of geography. This is about covenant, about obedience, about worship. Zion is not just important, it is eternal. It is the city where Abraham offered Isaac. It is where David ruled, where Solomon built the temple, where the Spirit of Yahawah filled the Holy of Holies. It is where Yahawashi, the Black Messiah, walked, taught, wept, bled, and will return to reign. To redirect prayer away from that holy place is, in their view, to reject everything the Most High established. You cannot claim to serve the God of the Bible, they warn, and at the same time turn your back on the city he chose forever. And yet 5 times a day, Muslims around the world face the black stone of Mecca. Not Zion, not Jerusalem, not the city of the prophets, but a cube in the Saudi desert, a cube that, according to Islamic tradition, was built by Abraham and Ishmael. But to the Black Israelites, this tradition is not history. It is heresy. It rewrites the sacred narrative to justify a counterfeit center of worship. It displaces Isaac with Ishmael, Jerusalem with Mecca, Yahawashi with Isa, the covenant with a new religion that, they argue, has no biblical legitimacy and no divine authority. The Kaaba, they say, is not the dwelling place of Yahawah. It is a man-made shrine revered not by the covenant people, but by strangers to the promise. This redirection, they say, is not passive. It is intentional. It is a system designed to divert allegiance away from the Most High and into a broader, universal religion that strips away the specific demands of the covenant. The name of God, the laws of Moses, the identity of Israel, and the destiny of Zion. It is, in their words, a broad road that leads many away from the narrow gate. And the consequences, they warn, are deadly, because Yahawah is not a God who changes his mind. He does not abandon Zion for convenience. He does not trade Jerusalem for Mecca. His promises are irrevocable, and to worship outside the terms of his covenant is to place oneself outside of his protection. They point to the prophetic significance of Zion throughout Scripture. It is the mountain from which Yahawah roars, Joel 3:16, the place where salvation will come, Isaiah 2:3, the throne of the king, Psalm 48:2, the city of truth, Zechariah 8:3, the gathering place for the 12 tribes in the last days, Isaiah 11:12. Nowhere in the Bible, they emphasize, is Mecca ever mentioned. Nowhere does Yahawah speak of placing his name there. Nowhere does he promise to return there. So why, they ask, has the world been led to bow to a place he never chose? The answer, they say, is deception. For the Black Israelites, this redirection of worship is not a neutral accident of religious history. It is spiritual warfare. A war over identity, a war over place, a war over truth, and at the heart of that war is Zion, the city of the great king. They believe Islam's elevation of Mecca is a strategy designed to erase the true covenant people from history and replace them with another. By removing Zion from the center of global worship, the world forgets the God of Zion. It forgets the people of Zion. It forgets the promises tied to that land. Promises of judgment, of deliverance, of restoration. If you remove Zion, they say, you remove the anchor of prophecy. And this is the warning they sound with fire in their voices. You cannot honor Yah by bowing to a stone in the desert. You cannot reject Zion and expect the king to recognize your offering. Worship is not just about intention, they argue. It is about location and allegiance. Yahawah does not accept offerings made on altars he did not build. He does not receive prayers directed to thrones he did not establish. And any system, religious, political, or cultural, that calls people to worship away from Zion is not of him. This is a test, they say. Will you follow the narrow path that leads back to Zion? Or will you follow the multitudes into spiritual exile? This is why, for the Black Israelites, the elevation of Mecca is not a sign of piety. It is a symbol of rebellion. It is the flag of a global system that dares to claim the promises of Yahawah while severing itself from the land, the people, and the covenant that those promises belong to. And in this rebellion, they see echoes of Babylon, of Rome, of every empire that tried to dethrone the Most High and rule in his place. Mecca, they argue, is not the throne of Yahawah. It is the throne of man, a shrine built on spiritual lies, maintained by oil wealth, and cloaked in the illusion of holiness. In conclusion, the Black Israelites stand with fierce resolve. Zion is the city of God, and it has no replacement. Any faith, any doctrine, any system that seeks to exalt another city over Jerusalem is, in their eyes, a false religion, Because Yahawah declared once and for all, "This is my rest forever, here will I dwell." To challenge that is to declare war against him. To turn away from Zion is to walk away from the covenant, and to lead others to do the same is to commit the ultimate betrayal, a betrayal that has led billions into spiritual exile, bowing to a stone while the throne of the Most High waits in Jerusalem for his people to return.